Hello, Snorfs. A couple months back, I posted my final FNaF concept for DBD. Now, I will admit, me making this video isn't me lying. This video isn't a complete concept like the last video, so if that's what you're looking for, I'd suggest checking that one out first. This video is more of an amendment to that video, as I wasn't super happy with the perks that I included, nor did I include art for said perks in the original video, so I'm doing it now. Before we get onto the perks, I want to describe a cool little addition I had in mind for my power for Springtrap from last time. If you don't remember what that power was, I'll put it up on screen now for you to read it. But my idea basically was, what if when night shift is activated, there's a display above the survivor HUD that shows what time it is in the night to essentially show survivors how much time is left for the night shift ability. So for example, when it starts, it would be 12 a.m. and once it eventually hits 6 a.m., the night shift ends, they hear a little clock chime, and then the HUD fades away. And what if on top of this, there's a night counter, and if you reach 5 nights in one match, 5 nights at Freddy's, you would get an achievement if you're playing a Springtrap. That would be pretty cool, I think. And maybe there could be further mechanics tied to, like, what night it is. But now onto the focus of this video, which is the perks. As a reminder, my concept features 3 characters for this chapter, with Michael, Afton, and Vanessa as survivors, and then Springtrap as the killer. Again, not all the perks I made last time were all too interesting. Some of them I've reworked into completely new perks. If these look familiar to you, I did post them on Reddit before making this video to get some public feedback on them before pushing them out in this video. But even still, some of these perks have changed from that post. But anyways, let's start with Michael's perks. First, we have Grim Memorandum. The start of shift exposition can't always be upbeat. At the start of the trial, the aura of the killer is revealed to you for 3-4-5 seconds. Get an auditory warning whenever the killer can see your aura or becomes undetectable. This perk would essentially act as lethal pursuit for survivors, letting you know where the killer is and who it is at the start of the match. This by itself isn't super useful, at least not as useful as it is for killer, which is why it has the bonus effect of notifying you when the killer goes undetectable or reveals your aura. It doesn't distinguish between the two though, so you'd have to do some thinking to consider which effect has become active and how you should react to it. It's worth noting that for these perks, I followed the dev's supposed philosophy of giving each character a perk for beginners, a wacky perk, and a perk that's genuinely supposed to be good. This perk falls on the beginner category for sure, as seasoned players can probably sniff out these pieces of information just with game sense. The basis of this perk is one of the most iconic aspects of the FNaF series, namely the various tutorial characters such as Phone Guy. Michael Afton canonically comes across one of these characters in Sister Location with Handy in it, but plenty of people speculate he is also the Night Guard in FNaF 1. Either way, the start of night tips are a key part of FNaF's gameplay loops, which is why I wanted to make a perk based on it. Mike's second perk is Deathless Resolve. Even caught between life and death, you do all you can to help. While you're in the dying state, this perk activates. Gain the ability to heal other survivors who are in the dying state and cleanse or bless totems. These interaction speeds are reduced by 50, 40, 30%. Gain the ability to use flashlights, and you no longer leave trails of blood. This perk appeared in my previous concept, but I've tuned it a little bit to make it a bit more fair. Namely, I removed the ability to sabotage hooks and replaced it with the ability to bless totems. People pointed out if someone on the ground is sabotaging a hook, there'd be no way to counter it. People could flop with plot twist or intentionally go down and still get a sabotage off, which may be unfair. But with the added ability to bless totems, you could potentially put up another perk to help in a slugging situation, such as Exponential or Circle of Healing. This perk is a reference to Michael's time as a hollowed out person, walking around after being scooped completely empty on the inside. His time being undead in the trials helps him deal with times of being near death. The icon for this one, as some may notice, uses Josh Hutcherson's likeness. However, to tie it back to the games more than the movie, I gave him the hair that Michael has in the mirror in Sister Location, so this is a reference to that scene as well. I think they line up nicely enough. Michael's third perk is Invocation Happiest Day. This perk has the same mumbo jumbo of every other invocation, so I won't read it all. But basically the gist is its active ability when the invocation's done is that it increases the chances for survivors to unhook themselves, being 100% in the tier 3 version. If you saw this post on Reddit, you saw that previously I had this effect essentially give everyone permanent unbreakable. People pointed out the problem with a perk like that is it would let flashlight squads be able to pretty much keep blinding you and prevent you from progressing the game at all, without you really being able to do anything to stop them, given they'd just be able to pick themselves up endlessly without any boon to kick. But this change could still keep it as a pretty powerful invocation, which is still something we haven't really seen yet. It would require you to put it up immediately to get the maximum value from it, and like every other invocation, the killer would be notified that it's active and may try to play around it by proxy camping, for example. But since invocations take 60 seconds to put up and hook states are 70, you could reasonably organize a plan to wait for someone to be hooked, start the invocation, and then have them unhook themselves. Could be cool. This perk is obviously referencing the Happy Stay from FNaF 3, which is a ritual in its own right. So if you believe Mike is the FNaF 3 guard or that the minigame is an allegory for what really happens in FNaF 6, Mike almost certainly had a hand in completing this ritual in the FNaF universe. In the trials, the same ritual would become a means to allow survivors to free themselves, namely from a hook, which could be cool thematically. The flavor quote for this perk is from the FNaF 6 ending speech, which I thought would be a nice touch. And the icon follows the same formula as the other invocations. I have the puppet's mask as the main object above the circle, given the Happy Stay ending, with the puppet's mask falling to the ground is pretty iconic. And the rune inside the circle I designed to look like one of the crying children from FNaF 3. Alright, with Mike covered, let's move on to Vanessa, who has the most extreme and in my opinion the most important changes. Her first perk is now called Leave No Trace. You become good at making sure nobody is onto you. Whenever you blind the killer, they lose the ability to see any scratch marks for 5, 6, 7 seconds once they are no longer blinded. This is definitely another perk for beginners, but could also be fun in a stealth build. I personally would like this more than the very similar parental guidance, as it wouldn't require you to go for a stun, which can be hard to do, and could also be used to help other teammates, given this perk would disable scratch mark visibility, not just your own. It would of course have the downside that you'd be going for blind and not a stun, meaning that you're essentially going into stealth without making any distance from the killer, which could be seen as a downside. But this perk is a reference to Vanessa's secret life as Vanny, sneaking around the Pizzaplex and whatnot. They also wanted to give her a flashlight perk, given she is a night guard after all, and even shines one in your face on her jump scare. The icon is simply an image of Vanny's legs mid-skip. Vanessa's second perk is Dark Resistance. You're all too familiar with resisting sinister forces. You can interact with exit gate switches, chest pallets, vault locations, and totems blocked by the entity. When you do so, the entity stops blocking that object and you become exhausted for 60, 50, 40 seconds. When you stop interacting with the given object, it returns to being blocked for the remaining duration it would have been blocked otherwise. This perk was in my previous concept, but I made some key changes to it to make it a little bit more fair and balanced. Firstly and most importantly, it can no longer unblock generators. Others made the case that if such a perk existed, half of all good slowdown perks would become useless, and killers would be stuck using flat gen regression, which wouldn't be super fun. Another flaw this perk had before is that it wouldn't do anything if the killer didn't have any blocking perks. The way I fixed this is adding that windows can also become unblocked. What this means is even if the killer doesn't have Dominance, No Way Out, Bamboozle, or any other entity blocking perk, it would still give you the possibly powerful benefit of being able to vault one more time than usual at a given vault location. I believe normally you can only vault a window 3 times in a chase before it becomes blocked for 30 seconds. This perk would allow you to vault one more time on a given window in a chase, but of course since it's an exhaustion perk, you likely wouldn't be able to use it again in the same chase. The idea for this perk is taken from Vanessa's resistance glitch trap in her mind in AR and security breach, this experience helping her fight against the entity in the realm. Vanessa's third perk is Boon High Security. It has the same mumbo jumbo of setting up a boon as every other boon, so I won't read that much. but its ability when active is it reduces the consumption rate of flashlight charges for all survivors within the boon's radius by 5, 10, 15%. At the boon's creation, all locations with a broken pallet in the boon's radius gain a boon pallet. Boon pallets break when dropped and are visibly blue and translucent for survivors and killers. All boon pallets disappear when the boon is snuffed or moves to a new totem. This would be a very unique boon that would play into the defense side of being a survivor, giving you about half the value of streetwise on your flashlights in the boon's radius, but also populating the area with temporary pallets you could use to try to get an extra stun in. This perk is obviously meant to reference Vanessa's job as a security guard, but is also meant to be a subtle nod to the Vanny mask from Ruin, with the boon pallets almost appearing like objects from the AR world in that game. As such, I had to include the Vanny mask in this perk's icon given A, it ties to Vanessa, and B, it ties to the AR world that this perk is referencing. As a fun fact, each boon in the game contains a special symbol in the outer circle of the icon that represents the character that owns the perk. For example, Shadow Step and Circle of Healing have these crescent moons to represent Michaela, Exponential has Pi to represent Jonah, and Illumination has these triangle things. I'm not super familiar with Alan Wake, but I assume the symbol is important to him in some way. For Vanessa, I made this icon a security badge. Overall, this is probably my favorite perk I've designed for this concept. Finally, we can cover Springtrap's perks. First off, we have From the Woodwork. You've been in cages for far too long, and you won't let yourself be sealed away ever again. You break pallets, walls, and generators silently. When you begin to break a pallet or wall, you become undetectable for 8, 10, 12 seconds. This perk would be pretty cool for jump scare builds, as it would let you get a short amount of undetectable on demand so long as the pallet or wall is nearby. It would let you break through walls without the survivors getting an audio warning, which could be frightening on maps like Midwich. The primary value of this perk though would be with mind games and chase. Oftentimes the survivor has to decide where and when to move based on if the killer breaks the pallet or not, and in rare cases, the survivor has to listen for you to break it. If it's completely silent, and you go silent as well, that could seriously throw them off. This perk references the fact that Springtrap literally came out of the woodwork in FNaF 3, with the Frights team discovering him in a boarded up room. The second perk is faulty wiring. It's harder for your victims to escape if their tools are faulty. The opening progress of exit gate switches can be determined by the intensity of their auras. When an exit gate is not being opened by a survivor, its opening progress regresses at a rate of 345% per second. This would be an endgame perk that would have the unique effect of causing the exit gates to regress when not worked on. To be clear, the survivors would be notified when the gates regress, as the gate would spark when let go of. It also has the second effect of you being able to tell if the gates are being worked on, which can have some value in situations where you can't find survivors in the endgame, or you're unable to see the lights of the exit gates from afar. Endgame perks tend to be inherently weak, and I understand that, but I designed this perk to kind of fill a role not yet filled, which is a perk that forces survivors to open the gates. As such, it could pair well with Blood Warden and endgame builds. This perk is based off of one of the main mechanics in FNaF 3, the system errors. The icon even has maintenance panel from FNaF 3 in it, which I thought would be a cool touch. The final perk is Unassuming Nature. At first glance, nobody would expect you to be a killer. You start the trial with the undetectable condition. This condition lasts until a survivor loses a health state, or you start your first chase. When the exit gates are powered, you become undetectable until the exit gates are opened. Once open, the undetectable lasts for an additional 10, 20, 30 seconds. This perk is meant to be the antithesis to Michael's first perk, as it would allow you to start the match already undetectable, which I thought would be a cool dynamic to have. This perk was in my last concept, but its secondary feature was a little confusing and weird, so I changed it to have this endgame feature. This perk could be pretty scary with the killer going silent once the generators are done. Paired with perks like Node, it could make an endgame build seriously frightening. This perk references William's, unassuming nature as a serial killer. How nobody would have guessed a children's restaurant owner or a guy in a rabbit suit would be killing kids in his spare time. But it also references Springtrap's presence in FNaF 3, being silent when he first starts moving, forcing you to keep track of him at all times. And the flavor text at the start is also kind of a funny reference to how people said for years that a FNaF chapter would never come to be. The icon for this perk is based off the iconic shot of Springtrap in FNaF 3, where he's staring closely into the camera with only half of his face on screen. But that's all I have. Let me know what you think of these more refined concepts in the comments. As of this video, we only have about 7 weeks to go before the reveal of the FNaF chapter, which will be at 11 AM on May 9th. So I hope you guys are getting excited. We have less time till then than there was between my last concept video and this one, so it really is right around the corner. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.